it's too hard to overlook the upside of that. Across North America, there's always an emerging market somewhere. Real estate goes in cycles, right? Eventually it turns because then you go across the table to their side and you're one of them. So those are like the big three. That starts like the foundation. I've seen agents rise and then they stop doing the things that got them there and they start to fall. Over time, the better you get at something, the more fun you get. And then you can start to get into mastery where it's like your art.
The enemy is complacency.
100%. I just think that constantly challenging yourself is something that the top people do that, and in order to stay at the top, you got to keep curating your craft. Boom, that's it. If you can't capture the message that quickly, they're not getting it.
Welcome to the Leads Are Shit. This is a real estate magazine podcast, and I'm here with the owner of Real Estate Magazine, Andrew Foliato. He is also the founder of Just Sell Homes, a real estate company or a marketing company, so real estate agents can just sell homes. My name is Taylor Hack. I am a real estate team leader in Edmonton, Alberta, and today we have Mark Ferris. I think we should say the Mark Ferris because you've achieved so much in real estate. You run the Mark Ferris team, which is a brokerage with multiple locations, built your way out of Barrie, Ontario, and I guess the way that you might put it is scaled up to the point where now you are running multiple businesses. How's it going, Mark?
Yeah, it's going great. Thanks for having me here, Taylor and Andrew. Always a pleasure to chat, and you know how everything goes full circle. It's crazy. We were just talking about that book, Buy Back Your Time.
Yeah.
Andrew, you recommended it to me. I recommended it to Taylor, and look at now
Yeah.
we're all all on the
We're
on the
doing it.
call here. So there you
Yeah.
go.
Then you had recommended to me this one, which I ended up
Yeah.
buying. I've now recommended that to a few people. And then I also put Vern on. When I use ChatGPT, I create a council of people to bounce ideas off of.
Oh, cool.
And Vern is the systems guy on my
Amazing.
council.
Oh, I love
So it's
that.
pretty,
Building a council on ChatGPT. Okay, that's a
yeah.
good
So I
for
take
me.
like just different experts in different areas and just say, okay, and I call it the 10th man council. So I'll just like, set up instructions with my GPT to be like, I'm summoning the council. Here's the topic we're debating. And it gives me the different angles. And
You know
it's
what's
awesome.
interesting, Andrew, is that Napoleon Hill back in the day, he actually had his book Think and Grow Rich. He talks about his invisible counselors, and he
Yeah.
actually had a table that he would have as like Abraham Lincoln, like all the guys that he admired, and he would actually had full on conversations with them. So fast track now, what like 50 half a decade or
Yeah.
we're actually doing that with ChatGPT. So
Yeah.
there you go. It's funny
I
how things
got
go
the
full circle.
idea because I read an article that it was like the CIA had created chatbots for each world leader based on all the stuff they've ever said publicly. And then they would use that to predict what world leaders might do or say related to certain events. I was like, well, a lot of famous authors have just as much content, if not more, out there. And then I started building my own with, oh, and it's been
Amazing.
super helpful. And then the
Cool.
10th man thing is that concept of like, because ChatGPT, if you use it a lot, it agrees with you on everything.
Yeah.
So the 10th man is that like principle of like, if nine people agree, the 10th person has to disagree. So every time
Mm.
I ask them, like, summon the council, this person on it's going to be the 10th man. And they specifically come and be like, here's why you're wrong on everything. And then
This
it's
is
a good way to
also
play it.
the future of business books. Like right now,
Yeah.
we go through these books and we try to glean knowledge and apply it to our business, right? But as we use GPTs and their memory improves, we're going to get into this situation where our GPT, like our custom assistant, is going to know a lot about our business. But then those people that create knowledge bases, like Chris Voss and some of the other authors that we talk about, instead of reading 300 pages that they kind of model into a book the same way that artists used to make albums with like a whole bunch of filler songs, you're going to get a custom GPT that they curate with information that they program in. And you're very likely going to be able to plug in your own assistant. So suddenly they'll know about your business and be the counselor you always wanted.
Mm. Yeah, it's phenomenal.
It's
Yeah.
crazy what's coming with all that.
Well, and actually, the one use from what I heard with ChatGPT is companionship now.
Yeah, that's
And it's
crazy.
interesting that it's interesting that the amount of people that are lonely in today's market. And so, what you had said earlier, Taylor and Andrew, that ChatGPT agrees with everything that you said. Well, when you have a companion there that knows you at a deep level and is empathetic and has full-on conversations, like that is the future right now. It's like, where's this going moving forward as they develop this further? So it's really interesting. We're at a very, very interesting time in history.
Absolutely. Mark, I want to get our audience to know you a little bit better because I have been checking into things and I also want to basically connect some dots here. So let's take a picture of where your business is now, and then I want to kind of go back to the beginning and explore our way up to there. So, how would you describe what your real estate business looks like now?
Well, there's we'll say two pillars of what I'm focusing on. So there's Ferris Team Real Estate Brokerage. So we're a large real estate team. We have 40 full-time real estate agents. We have about 60 staff in addition to the 40. So we're sitting around 100 team members. We're fully integrated from stagers, photo video team, couriers, and then there's the whole admin side of it and operation side and leadership on that end. So yeah, we help people north of Toronto, so Barrie and surrounding area, Newmarket, and really in Midland and Collingwood. And so yeah, we help people buy and sell homes. So that's pretty straightforward. And on the other side, we ran into a big problem when we were helping investors in Ontario. It was harder to find great deals that cash flow. Like many times through the years, guys, we'd have these clients that would want to invest in real estate. They take out a home equity line of credit, and we would help them buy a secondary property. And those properties would actually carry themselves in cash flow. And then it became harder and harder to do that. And then the landlord tenant board got a little more lax with the tenants, and 12 to 18 months to evict. And we'll just say there was more exposure when it came down to potential loss. And so there was a big problem there. And I said, you know what? Well, if I'm agnostic as to where I'm investing, where is the best place to invest? And I started researching across North America, and that led us down to the Southeast, Florida, South Carolina, Atlanta. And then it was a matter of, okay, we built a team over in Ferris Team. That was a skill set that I've been able to curate through the years. We want to build a team to be able to help Canadian investors invest down in the US, and doing it in a way that is, we'll say, extremely streamlined. And that's where we built Ferris Capital, where we go in, we buy these 100-unit apartment buildings that are value add. We go in, we renovate them over a period of 2 to 3 years, and then we look to exit them, giving those 20% returns and 5 to 7% distributions because they cash flow. So there's the two sides of it. We have full-time team of 8 over on Ferris Capital, fully integrated there, and then we got the Ferris team on the other side.
So that's something that a lot of Canadian real estate agents don't have a firm grasp on, is how incredibly lucrative that some of the American investments are.
Yeah, I mean, here's the number one thing I would say is when you're investing in an area, you want to make sure that if you have a bad tenant or a bad experience or they stop paying, that you can look after that. And unfortunately, I've had some not great experiences. We still have assets in Ontario. But if you can evict a tenant in 1 to 2 months that is causing damage to the home versus 12 to 18 months, you take a lot of exposure and risk off the table. Not only that, affordability becomes a really big thing. So in Barrie, for example, the average income to rent ratio is 50%. Toronto is 60%. And New York is 70%. And these markets we're buying in, after we do the renovations and we raise rents, it's still between 30 and 35%, and even below 30% in some cases of the average income. So for example, if somebody's making 100,000, that's the average income in an area, we're charging after we raise our rents under 35,000, which is still extremely affordable. So that means that if it's affordable today and there's ongoing growth and people are moving there, that's going to over time will increase. And so that's where we're buying in these affordable cities and well below replacement costs, and we're going in and adding value there.
That's interesting. So based on that, are there any markets in Canada that also fit that description?
Well, that's where Taylor, you'd be more the expert on that, coming from Alberta. In Ontario, it's what I found, and that's more my expertise, is it's very, very difficult to find cash flowing properties. And so for me, going through COVID and the turn where interest rates doubled, when you're buying for appreciation, and we saw this in the condo market in Toronto especially, they were wonderful. Like, you go in, you put your down payment, and then all of a sudden you're appreciating and you're leveraging an asset and you're selling and everything is beautiful. But if you're not in an appreciating market, it becomes like high exposure. And we're seeing this now where a lot of clients are that have purchased a number of years ago, they're underwater and now they have to come to the table with the check. And that's not my, we'll say, definition of a great investment. I want something that's going to put money in my pocket. So I became a real advocate of buying cash flowing properties. And so, Taylor, maybe you could talk a little bit about Alberta, because that is the one area perhaps that you can actually go in, find cash flowing properties, and execute on that end. And so that's where we did look out there, and we just saw that from an opportunity standpoint in the team that we were building. That for us, in the analysis we did, we saw that there was opportunity, and not only that, that there wasn't the option of, we'll say, a solution for Canadians to be able to invest in the US and doing it in a streamlined way. And so we wanted to be able to fill that gap there in the market.
Oh, I'm so excited because you and I have some matching puzzle pieces where now you're in a market that is diminishing, and that was most of my career, right? I
Mm.
would go on as a professional speaker all over North America. I'd meet people, we'd be excited to do business, and they'd be like, send me some opportunities. And I was like, listen, man, I can't. If I'm straight honest with you, I
Yeah.
cannot see a reason this will change right now. So I can't see us going back up. But then in 2022, when interest rates rose, that affordability that our market gained after 10 years of losing every single year, that became our superpower. We've never had affordability attract people to Alberta before, and now 75,000 people in the last 2 years to a province that only has 16 million people. It's made it really hot. And it's so funny because a lot of these people from Ontario and BC never thought they'd end up in Alberta. So
Mm.
they looked at the brochure for the first time and they're like, oh, Calgary, Gateway to the Mountains, Stampede looks fun. What's in Edmonton? Oh, that's where the oil field workers live. So Calgary flew. We saw so much intake into there, but now it's the contrast because a typical house there is worth 50% more than a typical house in my market 3 hours away. That's what's changing the game. So I have a lot to learn about these appreciating markets. I always like to meet with people that understand the way the market moves so that you can position yourself well. But the best thing about investors coming here, and we've been seeing some of the largest shark fins I've seen in my career. Like all the guys who went south to take advantage after the US financial crisis, they sold out here. And 2 years ago, we saw a $40 million purchase that averaged $106,000 a door. These
Mm.
are like a real estate investment trust. So we can see all these people coming in, and one of the reasons that they're coming in is Alberta has regulation resistance. It's actually redneck regulation resistance. We don't like rules. So when it comes down to the things that we've been seeing in your market, where you have to go to the landlord tenant board and wait 7 months without someone paying rent, basically being held hostage in a property you own, that wouldn't happen here. Most of our population has guns.
Yeah.
A little different.
Yeah, you know what? There's definitely there's some attraction there for sure. And that's from affordability, that's a big thing. Population growth, that's another thing as well. And employment, that's a big thing we look at. We really looked at like what happened to Detroit and why did Detroit have such a negative drop? If you look at history, what happened to Detroit through, the automotive shift, right? And it was very dependent on one, say, source. That's where for us, when we go into a market, we're like, okay, is the overall, we'll say, economy based more on kind of one area, or is it well diversified? So if one goes out, we're protected. So that's like a big thing that we go in and dive in. And then not only that, I mean, then you get into kind of the sub markets, as in what kind of inventory is coming in. Do you have this big 300 unit building coming in across the street that's going to, come in and, give a bunch of concessions and, lower rents and put some pressure on you as well. But I think that it's interesting. When I was growing through real estate investing, I thought that the only area that I could invest in was my backyard, But what I've realized is across North America, there's always an emerging market somewhere. Affordability that people can move to, they can buy. Eventually, all areas will be unaffordable. But until that happens, there becomes areas that will grow faster than others.
Hmm. So this is something I'm kind of getting to know about you, is that you think on things by taking them apart. You see all the pieces. Like even when you assembled your brokerage, you bought all the like kind of services to it to make it all streamlined. So when you were taking a look at what was happening in Ontario and then contrasting that against what was going on in Florida, what did you see?
Well, first off, I saw that, okay, properties can cash flow, which was phenomenal. Landlord, tenant board, similar to Alberta, like you can evict a non-paying tenant in 1 to 2 months. On renewals, if you have a problem resident, you just don't renew. That was great. And then I saw, you know what, like the amount of money moving to these areas, like the big dogs, the REITs, this is where they're actually purchasing properties. And so the affordability side was another. I really started digging in what drives, as an agent, you have a high level idea, but I was really driving into what drives upside more than others. And so that's where we started to really dive in. And then the economic diversity, as in, what jobs are where. And when I saw that, I was like, okay, great. But then here's the kicker. When I started looking at the larger, the 100 unit plus deals, why do the wealthy somehow gravitate? They start with their own house and then you get, fourplex. And you notice how the investors, as they become a little more seasoned, they get bigger and bigger and bigger because there's economies of scale. That we can renovate our units down there. We're just about to open up 114 units in Atlanta. We can renovate for like 14,000 a unit, really nice. Really, like these are like 1,000 square foot units. And so we can do that because we're renovating 100 units. Whereas if you do one off, you're not going to get that same kind of efficiency. Same with like overall, management. You just get discounts as you grow bigger. And that's where for Canadians to investing, there was a lot of complexity, not only complexity in tax code and when it comes down to legal side of it, but also with the management side, like who can I trust down there to actually execute it really well. And that's where I brought my partner, John. He's in Atlanta. He has a really great background with Mark Spain Real Estate. And so he grew and scaled that company. So we partnered up and said, okay, let's build this in a way that we can serve both sides of the border in a way that they can actually trust us. There's a brand name there. And the execution side of it, we're overshooting with our projections. So now it's just rinse and repeat moving forward.
Okay, that's amazing. So when we take a look at you talking about doing over 100 units, this is where very few people in real estate ever escalate to. That gives me like a good snapshot. I want to circle back to kind of the origin story, but we've also got a live audience. I love the idea that people come here every week. I think that everybody should share where they are in the chat so that we can see who you are and where you are. That gives us such good reference points. Cheryl had a great question. Curious where the emerging markets are in Canada. East Coast, maybe?
You know what? To be fair, I haven't done a deep dive in the East Coast. For me, Edmonton, Calgary, Alberta seem to be, from what I've identified. Out east, I haven't dug deep to be able to say, hey, listen, this is the place. I do know from Ontario that they're either heading west or east out in those areas. For me, what the biggest indicator that I look for when it comes down to growth markets is employment, like where are employers moving to? Because where employment grows, they need people. They're going to bring great paying jobs. And when people are moving into an area, they're gonna need beds, right? And that's where we're serving that market. So for us, the economic side of it in these markets that we're in Charleston and Tampa, Atlanta, these markets we're seeing are booming and growing really strong. But in Canada right now, you have some of these other areas like oil. It's interesting. There's some really interesting play there. If that starts to turn, that's where the Alberta market can be extremely explosive. And
Holy
so,
Dinah.
yeah, right. And Taylor, you need that right now. So all that being said, bring it full circle. The East Coast, I don't see a ton of employment there. Generally, you see the East Coasters come over to Ontario, make their money, and move back there and buy something on the ocean that has that beautiful view at a crazy discount. But not saying you can't do well there. I know some people that are doing fairly well because there's affordability, but the business side is something that we look at really strongly.
I
Yeah,
love where you're
very
mentioning in those.
anecdotally, most of the
Go ahead.
people I know who've moved East Coast, it's remote jobs. So like they kept their job back in Ontario and moved out there. A little
Yeah,
bit different.
that's right.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to have affordability attracting people because I've been in the real estate industry since I was like 22 or 23 years old. I did mortgages and then real estate.
Yeah.
It's only ever been oil that's got us to the table here.
Mm.
So when I think about the things that would be like dynamic catalysts, it would be oil on top of affordability.
Oh,
Would
yeah.
be
Yeah.
that would be steroids.
Yeah, it would be. And
Wouldn't be
because
affordable much longer.
100%,
No.
and because there's already affordability in Canada, and there isn't, if you look
Yeah.
across, there isn't a lot there. And Taylor, because of the history, you didn't have that. You were telling me you didn't have that boom like Ontario had. It's like, is it your time? Eventually, real estate goes in cycles, right? Eventually, it turns. So that would be very interesting if you get the combo.
Well, Alberta only does well when everyone else suffers, and that's kind of the music now.
It's got to time it to like go in
Uh,
and out.
So let's draw back. Like I want to start with the kind of a wide angle question of why real estate for you? How did you get drawn in?
Yeah, very cool question because I was a hockey player growing up. I played a couple seasons over in Sweden, down in the States. I walked in one day, I was playing the Central League, and coach called me in and said, "We put you on waivers," and walked in the change room. My stuff was in a garbage bag, and we flew out that night to back home with myself and my wife Joanna. We were recently married. And when I was back there, it was interesting. I was looking for another team, but I wasn't looking in the sports section. I was always looking in the real estate section. So many listeners, you could probably resonate. Before you get into real estate, you're really excited. You're on MLS all the time, and you remember the newspapers, they were coming out, and you're always looking at those. And for me, I love that side of it. I was always interested. But then I read this book, Rich Dad Poor Dad, when I was 17, and we actually, myself, my sister, and my mom, we bought this 8 room home near the college, Georgian College in Barrie, and we rented that out to students. And that was my first property when I was 17. And it started with an online infomercial. You go to a free event and then they upsell you to the 1,000, and then you do the 1,000, and then they upsize you to the 5,000, 5,000. Eventually, we bought the home, and from there we just started buying more and more. And really, that's where we created our wealth was, the real estate side generated really great income. But ultimately, we have agents on our team that, they've done really well and they've invested, and now they're all millionaires. Not all of them, but we do have a handful of them that are, because they did that along the way. I think that the combo of selling real estate and investing in real estate, it's too it's too hard to overlook the upside of that. Like if you invest along the way, and it's interesting when I talk to agents now, the number one regret they have is I wish I would have bought more real estate 10 years ago. I'm like, well, okay, totally understand where you're coming from. Now, 10 years from now, do you think be looking back in today and say, hey, I wish I would have bought more? It's like, probably. That's what history tells us. And so the case is too strong not to take some money off the table and invest in it. And what's interesting is that when you're investing in real estate as an agent, it actually makes you a better real estate agent, and it allows you to tap into the investor pool, because investors, they want to know that you have skin in the game, that you are an investor yourself, because then you go across the table to their side and you're one of them. And it's just like I tell my agents, if you want to specialize in a neighborhood, go and buy a house there. Go move there. If you want to start, selling waterfront properties, go buy a waterfront property, because you'll be more comfortable when you're doing it. You'll start to get introduced to people around you, and as a byproduct, you'll get more into it. So it's the same with investing. I think there's too many reasons why it is so good where agents would miss on that. I just think that it's one of the biggest opportunities in this business. We get exposed to deals all the time. And of course, we want to make sure that our clients get access to those deals. First, you're not scooping all the deals, but at the same time that you're taking your piece along the way, I think is extremely, extremely important.
I like that. What position did you play?
Oh, I was a mix. I played center for a bit, but mostly right wing. I shot right, and so I'd be coming down the right side. Sometimes I'd play on the left because then I'd have that open shot, but I always felt most comfortable on the right hand side.
Interesting. Is that
Yeah,
something that you see at all in how you approach business? Is being offensive?
definitely driver. I never really kind of connected those two dots. Uh, I've noticed that one of the things that we'll say is maybe something that I've curated through the years is the ability to set a goal and then drive for it very, very, we'll say intensely. And that's one thing I've noticed with most top real estate agents is like they'll make it happen. If there's a commitment, they'll figure out a way, and you don't hear kind of a lot of reasons why you can't make that happen. But I'd say to a certain degree, the driver mindset for sure. And perhaps the operations team is more on the defense side. So I think that could actually work, the offense and defense side. I would probably classify more in the offensive.
Yeah.
Because I see that too. I see my administrator as the goalie of our team,
Mhm.
right? And like if it gets past Landby, then we're in trouble. So that's how we kind of look at it.
Yeah, no, that's smart. I've actually never heard that contact or that analogy of that, so it's perfect.
Yeah, I bet there's like if you actually went and did a study of like the top 5% of agents in Canada, the vast majority played sports probably at some
Mm.
sort of high level. Like it's such a common thing you see at kind of high performing sales teams. So I find when you get into teams that are not sales specific, then it's a mix, but sales teams specifically,
Yeah,
athletes are always pretty high performing there.
yeah. I think for sure there's that element. It's something that we actually look for, and not just that, but like the track record of winning and the ability to be playing together, on a team and discipline. And one of the biggest attributes I think with top agents is they have an ability to go through the hard. And you guys, I don't know, like. If you guys ever had, a practice where the coach was pissed off at you because you did not play well the game before, and they line you up, there's no pucks, and for the full hour you're doing lines. We call it like bag skated. You got bagged that day, and that's tough. You're puking, and they're just doing that, and they're grinding you, right? But they're toughening you up at the same time. And I think the ability to push through your feelings is a very good attribute because, as a real estate agent, you're really building a business, whether you're on a team, whether you're building a team, regardless, if you have your agent license, you are running it as a business and you need to go out and get the bacon, right? And there's many, many hard days. You get one day, six deals are all falling apart. You're not feeling well, you're sick, your kids one of the teachers are yelling at your kids, and now you got to go deal with. There's like life is hard, but the ability to stay focused on the goal and still move forward and not let that kind of blow you off, I think that is really a byproduct, I think, of playing, sports, any competitive sports, or doing anything at a high enough level where you have to push through that hard. I think it's a muscle that you curate, and I think it's something that you can work towards.
Hey,
Oh,
those bag practices, I feel as though they're instrumental to young athletes because with all the top performers I've met, and I just love spending time with the people that operate at that high level because it really separates, like you can see these like almost like pure forms, and they don't love winning. They despise losing.
Mm.
Those bag practices are there to help you associate loss with pain.
Mm.
because I think that that drives more people than victory ever does. And most of the time, like Andy C, he was on here a few weeks ago. He called me the other day and he said, I just set my record for one day. And it was $42 million in real estate sold that day. And when you talk to Andy about his victories, it's not a win, it's a, like that elation. I
Mhm.
made it. Is that the same for you?
Um, hey, I do. We like to win for sure, and at the same time, we do hate to lose. So to me, it's like, is it the same side of the coin? I mean, there's two different, I guess, perspectives on that. But uh, for me, at the end of the day, it's about setting a goal, hitting a goal, and like winning overall. And so that's where I think competition is a very good thing in a marketplace. I think it drives execution better than most. But one of the things that for me, it's kind of changed. If you go on my podcast, there's one at the beginning that talks about motivators. In that conversation there, I'm speaking into there's certain times in your career where certain things motivate you to get up and go the extra mile. When I first started, it was just sheer, we had to put food on the table. And that was like, I didn't want to let down, or you could say lose or fail on providing for my family. That was extremely motivating. Then I got to a point where it was, okay, we've had food on the table. Now I want to win, I want to get to that top 1%. And so that was like there was this kind of the status play, right? And then there's it keeps going up, and I think things change as you go. But at the end of the day, I think competition and winning is something that is, I've noticed with the top agents, they're highly competitive at a deep nature. So whether you hate to lose, I don't like losing for sure, but winning, I think at the same time is also something that we love, especially on our team.
I remember when
Can
I
we
interviewed
unpack that?
you for the REM article back, I think it was like over a year ago now. I asked you kind of like, what do you do that's different than other agents that kind of accounts for, I think you just mentioned one year you did 1,700 deals, and you said that it's not that we do anything different. We just do the boring stuff really, really
Mm.
consistently as a team. It's like if you're an agent who's here listening to that, like what would you say would be like those things that you make sure everyone on the team is doing consistently that kind of drives that type of result?
Yeah, that's so good. The way I see it, I mean, it's pretty simple business. You generate leads, you take those leads, you convert them to appointments. You take those appointments, you do a good job, you convert them to an agreement. You have signed agreement, so now you have a client. Now you got to move them along, bring them over the bridge to an actual sale. Once you have a sale, then at that point, the goal is to actually get a referral, right? You do such a good job, you get a referral. If you do all those five things, I mean, and you're excellent at converting, bringing them one room to the next, man, like you can do really well. So that's where it's the ability to have great conversations. It starts with that. And that starts with finding the right people. So a genuine love of people is something that seems like this is not complex. But I think that as a real estate agent, if you have a genuine love of people, you're going to do the right thing. And so that's something we look for, the willingness to work hard and the willingness to learn. So those are like the big three. That starts like the foundation. And then it's a matter of how many conversations am I having? And am I getting better? Like reading How to Win Friends and Influence People, right? And the ability to execute and actually pour into that, get clear what their problem they're trying to solve, what's we'll say their main goal that they want to accomplish, and then how are you going to get them there? And so there's that, and then the presentations that they're set curated presentations for when you meet a buyer and you meet a seller to convert them from that appointment. You show your value prop, get clear what's important to them, and then you align the two, and then you convert them over, and then the ability to communicate effectively, negotiate a great deal, and actually hustle to be able to get them either buy a house or you're going to sell. And then from there, you're asking for the referral in a streamlined way. So if you do that on an ongoing basis, that's like the activity level. And then for us, we built the infrastructure to be able to have the agents plug in where they basically will generate appointments, and then from there, the appointments show up on the calendar. They're set, curated presentation where they can go in. Once they sign the documents, they upload the listing, and then we have everything streamlined, our in-house stager, photographer, video, and then the feature books are delivered the day before they list, and we can get that done overnight. And then from there, couriers will deliver the feature books with the Ferris jacket right in the car, Ferris car. And then from there, the agent takes it back over. So we're highly specialized, but I'll tell you, it was not pretty when we first started. I remember our first when we started doing our feature books. They're higher quality, right? And they used to take us like, we'll say, by the time they listed, it took us like 10 to 14 days after they were listed to get them the feature books. And it was like the houses would be sold a lot of times before they're done. They're like, oh, this is nice. We don't need
It's a
this
nice
now, right?
memento.
Uh, so I'll tell you, it was not pretty in the past.
Yeah.
And if anybody looks and like, oh, that's so nice, it's like there were brutal days, man. Like I'll tell you, one time we got our comp structure wrong with our inside sales team, and
Yeah.
I had four reps get up and walk out, and only one guy stayed. And because I got it wrong. Bottom line, ultimately, it was me. I got that wrong. We had to shift it. Four got up and walked out. One stayed. I was there for like weeks and weeks, hold that department together with the guy that stayed on, which I'm so thankful. He's actually leading that department now. We rebuilt it, and but that was brutal. And like I made lots of mistakes along the way, but what didn't stop was the ability to okay learn from it quickly and then go back at it again. That was
Yeah.
kind of the key of
So
everything.
I'm curious, especially like we're talking about like the ISA side, because like basically the whole show's premise of the leads are shit is a lot of people like they start generating leads and the first response is, oh, the leads are shit. I'm not getting deals. I'm not getting that. And ours is like it's either a marketing or a sales problem. Leads are leads. Like when you have, either like an ISA starting and do you ever get the ones who are like the leads you're sending me are shit? That's why I'm not hitting the numbers. Like, how do you handle that
Yeah.
with your team?
So here's what the reality is if somebody's reaching out and they're calling about a home, okay, that to me is they're not just wasting their time. Like if people are looking on realtor.ca, that's one thing, but if they're actually calling about a property, if the right property came up, there's a good chance they're going to move on it. But here's something bigger. I just want to back up for a second. I think that that's more of a culture thing that we don't talk like that here because everybody that you meet that owns a home knows 200 people. And so this is where our take on it is somebody calls in and they ask for a CMA and they'll just say, listen, I'm separating, I'm just looking at opinion of value. I'm not going to sell. Most agents, and we've had them come on our team where they came on and they called them, it's like, oh, I'll just tell you on the phone, we don't do that. Or they tell them on the phone, we're like, we go on every one there. Our take is that we're going to take that, we're going to go on the appointment, we're going to do the full presentation, we're going to spend 2 to 3 hours with them, we're going to wow them. Because what's interesting is that eventually they will sell. And the other agents that said no, they're calling us back. And a lot of times they will sell like within a month. And so that's where for us, every single opportunity that we're speaking to, whether maybe they might be, further up we'll say the buying cycle, because we know online leads, they take 6 months, right, to convert and sometimes longer. But the reality is that we're nurturing every conversation as an opportunity to wow. And when you do that enough, what happens is they start coming back to you. And we've had this many times. It's like you came over to the house 3 years ago, 5 years ago, we weren't selling and you did it and you did a phenomenal job. And that's if you keep doing that, day after day, month after month, year after year, those start coming back to you. And it's just like this other scenario when they call and they say, hey, listen, you want an appointment and they say they want with somebody else. Or maybe they call you before you get a chance to go in. And we're like, no problem. They're like, we just signed with somebody. We're like, no problem. Totally respect your decision. Just want to let you know the door is completely open for you if it doesn't work out. Do you know how many times they've called us back because we were loving on them? And you know how many times we've heard that when they list with us, they call the other agent back and the other agent ripped them. They yelled at them. They're upset with them. You wasted my time. And so they just like now the 200 people that they know, they're going to share that story of that person that ripped them. And for us, the one, the 200 people that they know, because we went the extra mile for them, because we did something that was not called for. Now we made a deposit, and based on Robert Cialdini's principle, the rule of reciprocity, that's going to come back at some point, and they're going to want to get you back, or at least say good things about you, and that's what creates a phenomenal reputation.
That reminds me of a story. It was Seinfeld on an interview, and he was out with a fellow celebrity having dinner, and the person gave a 20% tip. And Seinfeld's like, "What the hell are you doing? Like, that was $100 bill. You only put 20." He goes, "Yeah, 20% is a very good tip." He's like, "No, no, no. Like, that waiter's gonna, because the first time, so they say I serve Seinfeld and this person, the first question everyone says is, how much did they tip?" And so it's like
Right.
it's an investment in your reputation as
So
a
good.
good person of putting down a big tip, because that's the first question everyone wants to know. And it's always like, that's how the word gets around, that there are 200 people and there are 200 people.
So
And
good.
you'd much rather that be big tipper.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
that's great. And I'm a fan too. And I'm glad there's somebody else out there because when I share Seinfeld references,
Yeah.
there's generally one or two that get me, and I'm thankful for the one or two because the rest of them
Yeah.
look at me like I don't know what are you talking
Yeah.
about?
In
Uh,
my marketing teaching, I have a concept called the double dip offer, and it's entirely just named that because of
yeah,
Seinfeld of double dipping
yeah,
the chip. There's no other reason I've named it that other than that, but I always
yeah,
share that with a slide of him dipping it in.
yeah. Very cool.
That's pretty
So you
good.
reference a lot of books. How do you have a pace that you keep for reading, or is it only when special stuff comes out? You were talking about Robert Cialdini. He wrote this
Yeah,
book, Influence. It's been revised. It's that good. We were talking earlier about the book that you gifted me, which was Buy Back Your Time, and that had originally come from Andrew. And I also know that you're a big scaling up fan. Is there more of a series of things, or do you just keep a pace?
uh, so for me, my approach is it's not so much a pace. I'll go deep in an area and what's the reference? Just in time and kind of instead of just in case. As in when I'm say I'm doing something or I need to like build specialization, I'll go in and ravage through a bunch of books and then I'll pull out what I need to execute and then I'll move on. There's that part of like chapters in my life, and then there's some times where maybe I'm just listening on Audible as I'm driving around, or there are times where I'll go gaps in time without actually reading, and I'll just reference back to books as I'm going along. So what I do, so to answer your question short, I don't have like a steady rhythm with it. It's more when I need to go deep, I'll go deep and read a bunch of them. But what I do is actually go in and underline. I'll buy the Audible book and then I'll buy the physical book and I'll speed it up to like 1517. But the key is underlining the key topics or the key like nuggets. Uh, I keep referencing nuggets, but you do that, and at the end you go and you can summarize the key bullet points, the actions. And what's cool is that because I'm a big advocate of not learning like 100 books. I'd rather like learn like maybe 10 and go deep on those and keep rereading and then implement. So I'll underline, and when I have time, I'll go back and I'll just read the underlined points so that like really starts to anchor of the key main points. And so I do that fairly regular where I'll pick up a book, I'll go in and reference it, and then I'm going deeper every time with that. So that's more of kind of the rhythm that I've followed.
And I noticed that you annotate in your books. You write in them, you highlight them.
Oh, I beat them up. Yeah, 100%. And you'd be like, I'll just keep underlining and underlining. And then, the interesting thing is, I mean, Think and Grow Rich, I mean, that book has been beat up and underlined a million times. And so it's like all falling apart now through the years. But I think books need to be like, ravaged in a way. Instead of like keeping it at the beginning as you go to the library, you got to make it all perfect. For me, like little notes, and when you're reading, you get an idea. You just write it down and move on. Sometimes they're practical and you can use them, and other times it's like, but the point of getting them down, I think, is really, really important. That's helped me crystallize ideas.
Hmm.
And we have Chuck
Fantastic.
Charlton in the comments who'd like to
Oh,
hear
hey, Chuck.
more.
Hey,
Yeah,
right on,
one of
Chuck.
our favorite people. Love to hear more about how you establish and maintain a culture of achievement within your companies.
So we do have healthy competition. So we do have a leaderboard for our agents. Now, what's interesting is that in some brokerages, it gets like dirty aggressive. With our agents, it's like there's a healthy competition. And so we every week we share the leaderboard. And so you can see the agents that are actually ahead. And so for us, we have a once a year we actually take the top 10 agents to Mexico and then our top 5 culture award winners. And so that's actually voted by the team as who the culture award winners are. And so we bring them and their spouse, the top 5 and the spouse, and then the top 10 agents. And I'll tell you, and their spouses as well. I'll tell you, like, it creates some really good, we'll say, achievement, we'll say, motivation on that end. And so, we're big on setting goals as well, and keeping the agents on track with that. Like, there's ongoing meetings, and say quarterly as well. We'll keep going over, okay, new presentation, like let's role play that. And so, to me, it goes back to like John Wooden, like he went over the fundamentals, tying the shoelace at the beginning of the year. And what's interesting is that what I've noticed is that the more successful you become, complacency is a real thing you got to watch out for. But I've seen agents rise and then they stop doing the things that got them there and they start to fall. But if they just keep working on the fundamentals, and so here's a good example. There's this sushi master. You might have heard this in Tokyo. And this guy, for 50 years, he has this little hole in the wall of the subway in Japan, in Tokyo. And the guy has been going for 50 years making sushi. And it's like he's built his craft to a point where it's like people are paying $300 a seat for it. And there's a massive wait list. I think at one point, Barack Obama actually had to call the president of Japan to get a seat. But the point is, this chef, what he did was what he said was, I've been going into to practice 50 years now to practice. So he still sees his craft as practice. And so that's the cool thing, is that over time, the better you get at something, the more fun you get. And then you can start to get into mastery where it's like your art. And that only comes from doing it over and over and over and then improving it, getting feedback. And then from there, you can take it to a whole new level, which then it gets really fun.
Yeah, the movie is called Jiro Dreams of Sushi.
Good.
And you can see it on Netflix. It's a documentary. And this guy broke down his sushi craft to the point where his restaurant was built around his vision of making sushi. So much so that when his son decided to do the same and they designed his restaurant, they did it in mirror image because he's left-handed. So the way that he stands in his restaurant even reflects in the seating. It's incredible.
Yeah, I love that. Love that. Yeah.
So
I'll
you're
have to check
talking
that
about
one
like
out.
that grease the groove, like that do it each time, improve and reiterate over and over and over again, and create that in your culture. So everybody's kind of the enemy is complacency.
100%.
Mm.
That's real. And I know a lot of the agents that are on here, they're successful. They're doing well, they're putting food on the table, and maybe they're one of the top agents in their office. And like that's something you just got to really watch out for, because listen, it's a wonderful place to be. It's wonderful. But there's more there for you, I think, is if you keep working on the craft and you keep like setting bigger goals. And bigger goals doesn't necessarily mean more sales. It could be, higher conversion rate. It can be, more time with your family. It can be, okay, higher conversion rates for if you're training anybody, right? Whatever that is, like there's growth in some area. And I think by doing that, it allows you over time to grow into a completely different person. And so it's interesting because when I go back and I see the guy when I was 24 years old starting in real estate, like I see him now and it's a beautiful vision because he was like, young, wide-eyed, open to learning, and was willing to work hard, but he really didn't know much about selling real estate. And I look back at all the pain and hardships and things that I've learned through the years, and I'm like, I feel like a completely different person. And so that's where I think there's beauty in growth and hardship is actually helps push you to develop you to be able to take it to the next level. And I just think that constantly challenging yourself is something that the top people do that. And in order to stay at the top, you got to keep curating your craft.
I have a follow-up there. Have you watched the movie Moneyball?
Yeah, yeah. Is
Okay,
it
so
Brad
their
Pitt, right?
theory was it wasn't about these home run hitters. It was about people that consistently get on to first, right?
Mm.
When you take a look at bringing on new teammates, the theory behind that, are you looking for those home run hitters or are you playing more like Moneyball?
For us, it's I'd say I'd say the home runners are the ones with the strongest foundation because it's interesting. A top producer, let's just say somebody's doing 50 deals and they come over and they're not a culture fit. They could look like a home runner, but at the end of the day, could be very destructive to the overall culture.
Mhm.
So for me, like somebody that's a home run, and it's really you could look at it as a first base, and then you build on that. I guess a home run would be somebody that's, does 50, plus. They come over and they're an excellent culture fit and they're open to learn and grow. Those are a little bit far and fewer between, I'd say, because at that level, I think it could happen. But for us, it's somebody that is open to learning, hungry to work, and they have a genuine love of people, and they're just good with people. Like that's something that you can't train. We've 80% of our agents, we train them from scratch. They were not in real estate before. And so they've grown now into where they had no bad habits. And that for us is, you can look at that as, first base, second, or home run. And I think for us over the years, it's about that finding those three things: genuine love of people, work hard, and willing to learn. And the ones that keep the humility and the humbleness, and they don't get kind of the nose up, and they just stay in that groove of, okay, I'm open to learning and growth. Those ones, they tend to do extremely well for long periods of time. And then the ones that do really well and they're taking money off the table and investing in real estate, it's like a win-win-win all the way around.
I'm curious
I
when
see
you're
what
like
you're saying.
Bringing on a new team member, like, do you have specific KPIs? Like, this is what you have to hit in year one, this is what you have to hit in year two, and what does that kind of look like with your team?
So, um, we used to have, like, it was two sales a month. So it was 24 as our minimum. But, it's interesting because, sales have dropped since the peak in half. So it's like, from that minimum now, it's more of, are you doing the work and are there deals still going on the board? So it's more of uh, we're looking at more one-off situations because say you're not putting deals on the board and you're not putting in the work. Like we coach all of our partners, and we give them, like, here's the plan. Like, let's go and execute. And so these are more one-off. And we've seen where we have that conversation and they come in, they're like, it's exactly what they need. And they go and execute, and all of a sudden they're back on the horse and they're killing it. And then others, when they have that plan, they see it, they see themselves. And I'm not executing. They actually transition off. So it's interesting. The culture that we have, that's the other part of it, is that the existing team, they tend to either gravitate and like welcome somebody based on how they're acting. And then there's others where it's like they kind of are on the outskirts because they're treating other team members not well. And so for us, there's like a culture play, but then a deal play. There isn't like the set minimum. It's more of one-off scenarios that we do. And then are you putting in the work? And are we seeing an improvement as well?
Hmm. And when you talk about the attraction of things coming in, what did your marketing look like maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and how does it change now because the market's changed so much?
Well, definitely your dollars, you got to be more cautious of where you're spending your dollars now. You know, and the other thing, I mean, your listing costs, like we have right now, like 350 listings. I mean, it's the inventory carrying is, I mean, if properties don't sell, they're very expensive as well. So when we're taking on listings, we see that as part of the marketing costs as well as like when we're taking them on, we got to really believe in the listing as well. How we're marketing them, like not cutting corners. Anywhere that we had to say get tighter with their belt through the years, it's not on cutting back on the marketing for the listings. That was something that because exceptional marketing was one of our brand promises, we had to stick with that. It's for us now, like it's easy. I mean, you can go on Google PPC and budget is blown up. And then now you got these billboards as well where a lot of them are starting to go digital billboards, and now they got like 10 rotating. So your dollar, like it's great for the billboard companies, but then you got to reassess, are you still getting the exposure that you had before? So, there's always different channels that you can market in as well. For us, it's like if we're going to go into an area, we want to make sure that we're not just lost in the crowd, and then that it fits with our overall, we'll say, what we believe positions us as the authority in the marketplace.
I
No,
totally agree. And oh, go ahead.
I was curious one thing, because like I see a lot of people in the industry just say like you shouldn't just advertise a free home evaluation. That's what everybody does, and it's overdone. It doesn't work, and yet, and then like you like arguably the most successful team in Canada, and almost every billboard and message is free home evaluation. So like, have you tried other things, or are you just like stuck with that one since the beginning? What's like that thought process behind kind of the classic?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a good, and I've been, we've been challenged through the years, and we have tried other things as well. We actually, at one point, we actually took the face off the billboard, and it's like people are asking, it's like, "Are you still in business?"
Yeah.
And it's interesting. It's like, huh. Faces are the most recognized piece. It's like even in magazines. One of my mentors, Darren Hardy, used to be the editor of Success Magazine. He when he teaches, he says, "Hey, listen, when in magazines it's proven that when you flip, it's face to face to face. That's how people's eyes go, right? They look at faces." And so, real estate, we're in a very unique business where we actually are allowed to, and it's reasonable, and that you put your face on the board. And now some businesses are like, why does real estate do that? It just is, and it's like we're going to take advantage of that. But then when it comes to what it is you're advertising, one of the things that I've realized through the years is that any cute, complex sayings or statements, especially on billboards, like people are driving by and they got, boom, that's it. If you can't capture the message that quickly, they're not getting it. And so what was interesting, we came up with like really cute sayings through the years. We had different marketing people in our company through the years, and we had some really cute sayings, and we advertised them. And you know what the phone calls we got from? We got the phone calls from other marketing people that weren't looking to buy or sell. They call us or message us like, "Wow, that's amazing,"
Yeah.
but the call volume didn't increase. We didn't convert more leads, and so for us, it's like pick a message that's simple enough, make an offer simple enough, and less is more. And it's Gary Keller talks about this as well. It's like based on all of his analysis, the ones that just keep it simple, they tend to
Yeah.
do well. It's about the consistency.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I always think it's interesting when you look at it through like Dunbar's number. So most social media is based on Dunbar's number, and he measured the mass of primates' brains and was able to accurately predict their functional social size. For humans, I believe it's about 150, and we can see evidence of this because when you take a look at Mennonites and other groups that live in like small communities, at 150, they vote as to whether or not to split or stay together. We can also see it with how Facebook is set up. You ever notice how you don't see all of your friends on your news feed? That's because technically we would exceed Dunbar's number, therefore we would disassociate from the platform. So you're really getting your top 150. Now, if I look at that from like almost like a phone book in your phone, I'm old enough to know that there used to be a My Five where you'd get like discounts to call the people that were five closest to you. Well, imagine that those slots are the same with Dunbar's number, and in those 150, you may or may not have a realtor. So when I'm driving by and I see Mark's face over and over and over again, if I don't have a realtor in my network already, his face takes that spot and he becomes my agent.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, one, you got to be top one or two. Now, it's interesting as an individual agent, it's like, okay, well, where does that put me? What's interesting is that you don't need to be one or two in everybody's mind. You need to be one or two in a smaller group's mind to do extremely large business. And so the example is if say maybe you're big in the school, the kids' school, you're volunteering, and there's like a committee for the school, or maybe you're big in church, or you're big in we'll say bowling league, or in hockey, or whatever it is. If you're the go-to in that community, then you are one or two in their mind. And so you're the go-to and you're the, we'll say, convenient option as well. So I think that this concept can be taken into right across the board. The key is to be known as that the go-to or one or two in a certain portion number mind. And that's where, like for us, we tend to gravitate to the more expensive listings based on how we're marketing our homes. Like we just don't cut corners. We're very professional. And some entry level homes, sometimes it's like, oh, do you even do these smaller homes? Like, do you even do that? Like, yeah, for 100%. But for us, we're good when we put our marketing out there. We want to really appeal to that next level of if you want that next level service and exposure and marketing. So that's where I think that as an agent, it's getting clear who do you want to appeal to. It might just be people that like to have fun, and that is like your unique differentiator. Go all in on that because you're going to attract people that like to have fun, and you'll be that top one or two that appeals to them. So I think this is like a deeper conversation when it comes down to like branding and differentiation. But there's many different Italian restaurants that all sell Italian food. But I can tell you, I've been in a phenomenal Italian restaurant, and I've been at a really bad Italian restaurant. And so just like with real estate, how you do it is everything, even though the job itself is very similar.
Ah, that's a great way to close. And we've reached the top of the hour. So this has been the Leads the Shit, or the Leads Are Shit. It's a real estate magazine podcast with Andrew, myself, and Mark. He's coming every week now. No, I'm just kidding. Uh,
It's a pleasure.
we're-
We keep hanging out, right? So
Totally. But we're
appreciate
going to
you.
hang out for a little bit longer, but only with the people that are in the Zoom right now. So we're closing off on the public. We understand that you probably have a hard out here shortly, but we're willing to take a few questions from anybody who showed up here earlier today. Hope you guys are doing awesome. We will see you next time.
See you guys.